Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 26th day of October 2020, a very important day in the country as we await the unveiling of the BBI report at the Bomas of Kenya, but you've already started reading it and looking at the content and some of the proposals that are in it with Commissioner Oiganjo, Commissioner Letangule and Commissioner Nyokabi, but also joining us via phone is Advocate of the High Court, Steve Ogola. But Commissioner Nyokabi wants to leave, but I wanted you to make your final remarks on this conversation, and specifically about, you talked about they're not exactly representing political parties. But then again, there's that perception question, because right now we might be dealing with, we don't have faith in this commission, just like we didn't have faith, not myself, but the political class didn't have faith in Commissioner Letangule's commission, and so they had to leave. But eventually, what will be the ultimate solution? Because you can reduce the tenure from 6 to 4 and even further, but our political manners are still not healed.
That's true. That's true. I mean, and if you look at the report, actually, a sort of interesting conversation at the BBI team was whether we should have a committee on behavior change. And maybe that's what we need. What we actually need is a report on behavior change. So it is indeed true that, and you will see the responsibility clause in the same draft bill, that we have to be different types of citizens, and our patriotism and our love for country and our duty to serve, so that when you're appointed as a commissioner, then you have a duty to serve around that. So that's a whole software question, and that's what you see with the BBI, software issues that we need to deal with here in the country. And what I'm liking is that this is the beginning of a conversation, so that the IEBC has now come up as an area that we really must look into, because it is the bridge for us with the elections, and we want peaceful elections, because remember the quest is that after elections, we all go back to the work that we do. Nobody gets displaced from their homes, nobody gets killed, nobody has violence, not even as women who suffer electoral violence. You will see electoral violence matters for gender, and the gender concerns around electoral violence have been addressed. So that question of what kind of electoral management body do we then design for the society that we are? And the ones that you see there, they just took stock of our trust issues. But going forward, and in terms of improvements, we can look at it. But those three particular issues were critical. The parliamentary political parties, and in parliament, it is not just minority and majority. Even in the majority is a coalition of parties. In minority is a coalition of parties. So that, you know, even like you look at how parliament appoints parliamentary service commissioners. It is not actually just one party. If it is NASA, the NASA coalition. If it is Jubilee, the Jubilee coalition. So that was one. The other one was the time element, the 4 years, and the last one, the 7. I particularly am a big factor for 7. In fact, the best commissions are 5 to 7. We have made very many mistakes with 9, because when we do 9, we just do the provinces. But 5 or 7 means we agree on the best Kenyans to come and help us with this role. And those Kenyans that we agree on, they also don't fail us, so that we can get confidence in the institutions that we have. It's a larger conversation. I think let's keep at it, and let's look at the documents holistically. Let's put the best for our country, because what happens with BBI is that countries that have this kind of conversations are more likely to be peaceful. So this is a really good moment that we're having this conversation. Is a positive thing for the country. All right.
Of course, unfortunately, Commissioner Nyokabi has to leave. We'll allow you to leave so that you can continue the next phase of the conversation that will be focusing on the implementation of this report at a time that different political parties and political quarters are already opposing the thought process about this. But Commissioner Letangule, to close in on the conversation around IEBC, so how do you deal with the question of vetting these commissioners? Of course, yourselves, you're never given that opportunity to be vetted.
Thank you.
So what do you think needs to happen so that the team of Wafula Chebukati, which already they are saying that they are not comfortable with that proposal, what do you think needs to happen so that we have what is fair in law, but also what is being seen to be done?
Well, I can understand where Chairman Chebukati is coming from with this protest letter about the vetting. I think if I were to advise the team, they should now take this opportunity to negotiate the exit. Because once these trust issues crop up, they have no chance. You see, when this vetting is introduced, basically that trust issues come in, and unfortunately the vetting may just find them unsuitable. So the three remaining...
But on what grounds? I mean,
it's natural.
In the chairman's statement, he says that even the Supreme Court decisions in both petitions, or the three petitions, the presidential petitions, it found no criminal culpability on their side.
I know. Even on our part, the Hassan-led commission, where I was a member, they looked at it. They looked at everything. And at the end, they said, we find nothing against you, but still you must go. So we negotiated for what we called a dignified exit, and that's what happened to us. I think the remaining commissioners must do the same to save their faces. They should not subject themselves to this panel. And I sincerely hope Chebukati should initiate an exit plan. But talking about the panel, the vetting panel, the proposal is to vet the staff of the commission and give them a 3-year contract. I have an issue there because if then you vet all the staff, surely, and give them 3-year contract, I think that's unfair to junior staff, like the drivers, the secretaries, and all other junior staff. I think the vetting should be confined to senior staff, directors, commissioners, and things like that, and leave the incoming commissioners to probably deal with the vetting of junior staff. But contracts should be, the 3-year contract should be limited to senior staff. I think it's unfair to give a driver 3-year contract, to other junior staff 3-year contract. I think those must have some permanent terms of reference. Yeah.
And of course, I will be waiting to hear how that conversation goes. Steve Ogola, Advocate of the High Court, I don't know if you have any thoughts in closing about that, so that you can now talk about the implementation.
Just 2 issues, Sam. In principle, there is nothing wrong with replacing IEBC commissioner. But I want to ask a practical first question. Should we leave it to the passion and discretion of the political elite to determine when we have a commission and when we don't have a commission? And when that position contradicts the Constitution, should we just say public trust has been lost? And who should be framing the conversation around public trust? Because public trust in election management should be people-driven. If you look at India, for instance, the civil society and the active citizens in India are the people that protect the integrity of the Electoral Commission. But in Kenya, we have deferred that responsibility to the political leaders who are interested in the outcome of that election. You can see a problem there. When IEBC delivers an election that does not favor their position, IEBC will always be a subject for contestation. But if IEBC delivers an election that matches the expectation, then IEBC will be right. I have no problem with disbanding any commission every 5 years. But let us be honest to say that if you want to disband the commission every 5 years, then you will lose institutional memory, then you will lose institutional independence, and then the people who come there, they'll be coming there knowing that they are deal breakers, not necessarily to develop the institutional integrity and continuity of that commission. That is what I can say about composition of IEBC within the BBI reform process.
Okay, all right. And let's now quickly talk about the implementation of this report. And Commissioner Iganjo, I want to begin with you. Of course, you've seen what the Deputy President has said, that those that are telling us about the reggae cannot be stopped will have to give us a break. I'm just quoting word for word. But also some politicians in his circle are saying that this is appearing to be an agenda of a few, and now this has to be open to the national conversation. How many conversations shall we have? Because on the 27th of November 2019, the first format or the first report of the BBI was released. Now today, 26th of October 2020, another one is being released. What more conversations must we have, and what do you think needs to happen in the next phase?
Now, the reality is that this process is also time-bound. It's not open-ended. At some point, the conversations have to come to an end, because I don't think we're looking for a perfect document that resolves all our problems. We are a very complicated country, and I think to assume that we'll finally find a document that's perfect, that everyone agrees with, is a bit naive. So at some point, I think the document that was released in the last time it was released, I can't remember the time, the document that is there today is an improvement, which means that the issues that were raised about that initial report, a lot of them have been incorporated. I'm very happy about the devolution provisions, for example, and 35% increase, which would have given us 560 billion shillings if that document is passed. So I'd like it to pass, even if not even for that reason only. But I think it's good to recognize that if, especially if we're going to go to the referendum route, we have timelines which we must meet. If we go the popular initiative route which I've had mentioned, again, we don't have an open-ended time frame. So the earlier we conclude the discussion, the better. I think there are certain areas that I think that needs to be cleared up, but even those need to be done very, very quickly, so that as we have a bill for voting either by parliament or through a referendum, by the end of the year at the very, very latest. Otherwise, after that, we're going to have problems. But number two is that the report makes very many proposals of a policy and administrative nature. There is no reason why we can't have an implementation plan that starts today. Because a lot of those things, actually 70% of the report does not require even legal changes. It's actually policy. I think government now needs to give a sort of timeline for how they implement the administrative and policy changes, even as we wait for the constitutional process, which may take a little longer.
But when you look at the legislative proposals, and specifically on the constitutional amendment bill proposed by the BBI, of course, in this conversation, you've seen that there are some certain areas that all the panelists feel needs relooking. So when it's taken to, let's say, the popular initiative to the county assemblies, is there a window of revising those things, and should the MCAs not be comfortable with either of them? Now that means that it collapses?
No, the document, once it is translated into a bill and presented to IEBC for purposes of sending it to the county assemblies, that's it. You either accept the whole thing or you reject the whole thing. So the opportunity for any changes is between now and when it is converted into a form. It is now a draft bill. It will be converted into a bill now being submitted by IEBC to the, assuming it's the popular initiative, for that process to go on. If it goes to parliament also as a bill, it cannot be amended. You take it as a whole or reject it as a whole. So in a sense, the opportunity we have is now, in the next couple of weeks, if there are going to be any changes. But once it goes either to parliament or the county assembly, that's it.
Okay, and Commissioner Letangule, so now if that window exists, that some of the areas can be looked at, it has taken nearly 3 years, if you're to count from March 9th, 2018, well, it's just over 2 years. It has taken 2 years to have this conversation. So how much more time do you think can be allowed to really relook at some of these issues and be cognizant that there's an election coming and there are things that need to be done before that election?
I think there is a lot of pressure, knowing that the next election is 2022, so we barely have no time. By the way, in 2021, election cycle kicks in, and so it means that, that the next year will be preoccupied with a lot of campaigns and things like that. So there's no time. Now that we have a report, and I can see the report has also provided some sort of matrix on its implementation, and it's being launched today at Bomas. We have a very short period of time to look at it, and we are having this conversation now. We've raised a few issues, like the ones I've raised about the need to relook at whether commissioners must come from political parties. This is the time to interrogate this draft report, and we agree on a few changes that must be made. For example, on the issue of whether the president is supposed to appoint an ombudsman for the judiciary. If that proposal is whether it's good or whether we make that office an independent office, just like the Auditor General, just like the Control of Budget and all those. Maybe this is the time to relook at those issues, because the report is good. We all agree, for example, that there's need to have that ombudsman. But how it is packaged is the issue.
Okay, and Commissioner...
So the window is short.
Okay, the window is short. And we have live on our screens the live pictures from the Bomas of Kenya. You can see the image of the BBI report and some of the local dailies there. Of course, our team of reporters, Francis Gashuri, Stephen Leto, as well as Chemtai Goina, they'll be joining us as soon as is possible. But as we end up on this conversation, Steve Ogola, you're still there. So now, again, the same question of politicians taking sides. I hope they are doing so after reading it. But that window of opportunity that we can have further conversations, how short or how long do you think it should take so that we can have the implementation matrix?
I think implementation of the BBI proposal should begin in earnest, and I agree with Lawyer Modo Ganji on that. But conversations must happen ad infinitum, because this is a democracy. The moment you stop talking, you start fighting. What I like about the BBI as an organizing principle is that the political leadership recognize that they contribute the greatest problem to the peace and security of the country. And they decided, through the handshake, to have a conversation that closes the differences. That's a good thing. And some of the proposals in the BBI report are actually beneficial if you look at them. Like, for instance, dispersing more resources to the periphery. It's a good thing. If you want an expanded and an inclusive executive, that's fine. But I think the conversation that is outstanding is this. We need a paradigm shift in our culture, in our attitude. The problem we have now is the problem of bad manners. We have a problem of bad manners, people trying to comply with the Constitution and the law based on conveniences, political conveniences. We also need to have a conversation that changes that. But in terms of timelines of the report, we should be good to go from today.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Advocate Steve Ogolla, Commissioner Kamatho Iganja, former commissioner with the CIC, as well as Thomas Letangule, former commissioner of IEBC. And for the viewers who've been sending us feedback, by including Thomas Likongo, who tells us that these latest constitutional changes are vague about the needs of the common mwananchi and therefore uncalled for. We thought that the constitutional changes would be about reducing the burden of Wanjiko, and this is because Jenga Andrew is saying that 364 members of the National Assembly is extremely bloated to be maintained by common mwananchi through tax, since they are not volunteers. This makes the poor poorer. I find all this unnecessary. Of course, those are just, it's not scientific, just some of the views that are coming to us through our Twitter feed at Citizen TV Kenya. Of course, you can continue that conversation on the screen at the live pictures of the bombers of Kenya. And the next phase of conversation will be led by Nimrod Tabu and Mwanahamisi Hamadi, who will be here with the Swahili language, but also on location at the bombers of Kenya, we have Rashid Abdallah, as well as Lulu Hassan and Francis Gashuri. Stephen Letonche Mtaigoen will be joining us later on. But for now, we leave you with those live pictures. My name is Sam Gituku. See you again tomorrow at 6 o'clock.